Today, we're not going to talk about what to say. Instead, we're going to deconstruct one of the most powerful and honestly most misunderstood forces in all of communication: silence. We're going to map the hidden dynamics that kick in the very moment the words stop. So let's start with the core principle at play here. Just let that sink in for a second. We live in a world that's obsessed with having a voice, with speaking up. But the real leverage? That often belongs to the quietest person in the room. This single idea, this signal, it really challenges everything we think we know about influence, and it's the key to our whole analysis today. Now, this isn't just some random thing that happens. It's a predictable pattern. It shows up again and again and again in high-stakes environments, whether you're in a boardroom or at a negotiation table. There are three specific ways that silence completely changes the reality of a conversation. So these are the three core signals we're going to dissect. Silence forces truth, it creates meaning out of thin air, and it signals power. Let's break down exactly how each one of these really works. Okay, this first signal, it's all about pressure. The moment you stop talking, you literally shift the conversational pressure over to the other person. All of a sudden, their prepared script runs out, that comfortable back and forth is gone, and in that vacuum, they feel this intense psychological need to fill the space. And that's the moment. That's where the unscripted thoughts, the real clarifications, and sometimes the confessions just emerge. The quiet takes away their cover. The second signal here taps into something really fundamental about our psychology. Our minds absolutely hate a vacuum. They can't stand ambiguity. They demand an answer. So when you introduce a pause, you're creating ambiguity. And the other person's brain immediately goes into overdrive trying to solve it, projecting its own stories, its own fears, its own assumptions into that gap. You're not saying a word, but you're learning absolutely everything about what's going on inside their head. And this brings us to the third signal, which is the direct link between being still and having status. I mean, think about it. In any social situation, who's the one who can afford not to react right away? The person with control. Being reactive signals that you need approval or that you've lost your cool. Stillness, on the other hand, that communicates confidence. It signals authority. The person who stays calm in a tense negotiation is usually the one who decides how it ends. They set the entire emotional tone. Okay, so we've got the theory down. Now let's see how these signals actually play out in the real world, in the game of a conversation. This is where we really get into the physics of it all and see who's truly in control of the interaction. And this is the fundamental question, isn't it? Is it the person talking the most, the one with all the facts and data? Or is it someone else entirely? Let's look at the two roles that pop up in any conversation where silence is a factor. This side-by-side comparison makes the difference crystal clear. On one side, you have the reactive speaker. They feel the pressure from the silence, and they just rush to fill it. And when they do that, they give away information, and they lose control of the conversation's frame. But on the other side, you have the strategic listener. They use that silence. They apply pressure just by being quieted. They gather up all the information that gets revealed, and they wind up with total control of the frame. Look, understanding this dynamic isn't just some nice-to-have skill. Ignoring this signal isn't a missed opportunity, it's a huge disadvantage. There's a really high cost to just constantly filling the air with noise. So many of us operate under this illusion, right? We think that if we just talk more, provide more data, more contact, then people will finally understand us. But a lot of the time, it does the exact opposite. It just buries the important stuff in noise, and we mistake all that explaining for actually having influence. See, real communication failure is rarely about the content. It's about a lack of awareness. It's about not seeing the underlying game that is always being played right under the surface of the words, the game of pressure, status, and control. And the costs of not seeing that game, they're incredibly clear and direct. When you rush to fill silence, you get misunderstood because you're just reacting, not actually responding. You lose influence because you seem less confident. You reveal way too much about your position and your own anxieties. And in the end, you just hand over control of the entire conversation to the person who's comfortable sitting in that pause. So what is it? What's the thing that separates elite communicators, the leaders, the top negotiators from everyone else? Well, it's not a list of tactics. It's not a secret script. It's a completely different way of seeing what silence even is. And this is the edge. For most of us, a pause in a conversation feels, well, awkward. It's an empty space we feel like we have to fill immediately. But for a top-tier communicator, that exact same pause is overflowing with information. It's a chance to just observe, to gather intelligence, and to understand what's really going on. They see silence as an active tool, not just a passive void. Okay, so to really let this sink in, let's finish by turning the lens on ourselves. The goal here isn't to give you a bunch of rules. It's to give you a new framework for looking at your own communication habits. So let's reflect with 3 final questions. So, first question. Just think about it for a second. When do you rush to speak? Is it when you feel like you're not being understood, when you're under pressure, or maybe when you feel like your status is being challenged? Just knowing your trigger, that's the first step to getting control over the impulse. Okay, second question. When you do jump in to fill that silence, what are you revealing? Are you giving away your insecurities, your bottom line in a negotiation, your need for their approval? What story is that rush to speak actually telling them about you? And finally, the last question, the one that really ties all of this together. How calm are you? Because your level of calm, especially when things get ambiguous, directly signals your level of control and your status. In the game of communication, stillness isn't just a strategy, it is the signal of power.